Shortly after, the two arrived at the weapons exchange warehouse. Zhang Yi handed over his scorecard. The quartermaster checked Zhang Yi's points and authority level and found them to be very high, meaning in terms of weapons, equipment, and supplies he could exchange for were far better than those of other mutants from the outer cities. After all, with a whopping 420 million points, he meets a lot of exchange authorities. The first exchange points he asked for was the SLDS-2 type battle suit. To this, the quartermaster silently checked and replied that exchange points was 50 million, and there was no limit to the number of sets he can exchange for. Did he want to redeem? Of course, this stipulation was specially made for Zhang Yi, and the approval came directly from the commander's office. Everyone, however, can only apply for a second set if their uniform was damaged. Zhang Yi held his chin and thought for a while, then asked about compound number 5. Do I have enough authority to redeem compound number 5? Again, the quartermaster checked and nodded slightly. Apparently, the required redemption authority of compound number 5 was A level, and the redemption points was 100 million. Obviously, Zhang Yi meets the redemption conditions. Do you want to redeem it? The quartermaster asked. Again, Zhang Yi thought for a while before nodding slightly. He chose to redeem one copy. After all, no matter how big the side effects were, it was nothing compared to the ability to save lives at critical moments. Such a thing must be taken back to the shelter and let Zhou Qi and Lu Karen analyze its composition to see if they can produce it themselves. Anyway, since compound number 5 had been exchanged, Zhang Yi also became very interested in several other compounds, so he asked about the functions and prices of them. The quartermaster patiently introduced them to Zhang Yi one at a time. Compound number 1 increases the chances of awakening by 20%, and the exchange points are 150 million. Although it's said to be 20%, the actual effect is very ordinary. Compound number 2 strengthens an ability and can help the evolution of mutants to a certain extent, but it is limited by the user's own qualifications and the effect is unpredictable. The redemption points are 120 million. Compound number 4 is a military stimulant that can increase the strength of a mutant by 20% within 12 hours of use. The side effects are significant and may be accompanied by symptoms such as dizziness, vomiting, and dehydration. The redemption points are 20 million. Zhang Yi keenly discovered that compound number 3 did not appear on the list, so he asked about it. The quartermaster replied calmly, "Compound number 3 is not on the exchange list." "Oh really? That's quite mysterious, isn't it?" Bailey Chongqing chimed in at this moment. These drugs are developed by the scientific research departments and some of their medicines have special effects. So they are not open to the public, although they are too expensive. I don't even know the effects or the existence of some of these drugs. However, if you join the investigation team, you can become a formal member, and these things have internal discounts if you want to exchange points for them. The reason why these things are so expensive is that they are open to the public. Ordinary soldiers or civilians in the city, or mutants from the outer city have to pay a higher price to exchange. But the special forces, such as the investigation teams and the Yenyun troops, have more friendly prices. Zhang Yi suddenly realized something and whispered into Bailey Chongqing's ear, asking if he could help him redeem the copies instead. The points will be transferred to him later. Bailey Chongqing smiled awkwardly and explained that it won't work. The exchange of such special items are registered, so it is irrational to do anything tricky once registered. Zhang Yi spread his hands helplessly. He weighed his options and finally decided not to rush to exchange the battle suit for the time being. Anyway, when carrying out the mission later, Zhu Zhang would not be stingy with a set of battle suits. The medicines, on the other hand, must be exchanged first so Lu Karen and Zhou Qi can do the research required. Resolved, Zhang Yi exchanged for 4 potions, which cost him a total of 390 million points, leaving only 30 million points left in his hand. Placing them into his alternate space, he thought about going back to Tianhai City first to personally hand the drugs over. Tianhai City was not far from Blizzard City, so he estimated the journey to only take less than half a day to go back and forth. However, Bailey Chongqing, with a mysterious smile, explained to Zhang Yi that the people from the Samsara team would arrive soon, so it would be better for Zhang Yi to meet them. Then, he can ask Zhu Zhang to let him go back to Tianhai City. Zhang Yi patted Bailey Chongqing's shoulder and raised an eyebrow with a playful look on his face. "I don't want to be the captain of the dog-licking team, so I'm not in a hurry to meet the captain of the Samsara team either. Even if I have to cooperate with them, the captain position will still be left to you." Bailey Chongqing placed an arm around Zhang Yi's shoulders and stated bitterly, "Do you think I don't want to? The issue is that if a person is not capable enough, it is a crime to take responsibility forcefully." He even felt a little regretful for his greed at the beginning. "Except you," he continued. "No one is more suitable to be the captain of Tengu. Besides, the main reason I want to introduce you to the captain of the Samsara team is because he's my friend." "Friend? Huh." Zhang Yi curled his lips. Well, in that case, there's nothing wrong with meeting each other. Zhang Yi had no objections, and out of respect, he plans to inform Zhu Zhang before he leaves. The two left the weapons exchange warehouse and were heading to a parking space outside when they saw a massive crowd at an intersection. Zhang Yi's hearing was pretty good, so he could vaguely hear what the crowd were saying. The Samsara squad has returned victorious once again after completing their mission brilliantly. In comparison to the Celestial God squad, they're truly the pride of the common people. Gao Changkong is our pride. He is much better than Deng Shintong, who says that only the children of wealthy families can achieve great things. Children from ordinary families like us are no worse than them. Zhang Yi watched a group of people in down jackets running towards East City. Among them are some group of girls waving tall flags and shouting vague slogans. Zhang Yi was dumbfounded. At this time, there is still such a powerful fan culture? Bailey Chongqing couldn't help smiling when he saw Zhang Yi's reaction. How about it? Have you learned something new? Zhang Yi, incredulous, asked Bailey Chongqing how come there are so many people. Don't they have any work to do? Bailey Chongqing explained calmly. The girls who came out here to greet the Samsara team either have parents who are engaged in high-end jobs and earn enough points to support them, or they are just ordinary people, but they're here desperately chasing stars. They are quite adventurous. If they don't earn enough points because of skipping work, they can only sleep on the streets, and they won't even have points left to buy food, hot water, and electricity. But they probably believe that these moments are still worth it. Zhang Yi looked at their backs and couldn't help but think of the slogans they recited. Gao Changkong. Could it be that Gao Changkong? Bailey Chongqing nodded slightly. Yes, is that same person. Gao Changkong, this name was almost a household name in Huashu country. He was an extremely outstanding basketball player. He first dominated the domestic arena, then later entered the NBA, played for the Chicheng Red Suns as a forward for 12 years, and even has 3 championship rings. Now, he was the captain of the Samsara team. Bailey Chongqing's eyes flashed with the same light as those of the female fans just now. Yes, he is a very remarkable person. Zhang Yi doesn't play basketball much, but Gao Changkong's name was a well-known figure back then. Basically, anyone who can play basketball will be enthusiastic about Gao Changkong. Zhang Yi couldn't help but sigh. Isn't this a complete winner in life? Whether before or after the apocalypse, he is so outstanding and dazzling. Zhang Yi was not a star chaser, so it's hard for him to comment on anything. But looking at the entire Blizzard City, it seems Gao Changkong was one of the most popular people. Although compared to the super-rich second-generation Deng Shintong, his background is relatively ordinary and he doesn't have such good resources. But his influence among ordinary people may be even better. This kind of sports superstar was naturally very strong in terms of physical fitness, so it's not surprising that he is stronger after the era of mass mutation. On both sides of the road, countless fanatical fans shouted Gao Changkong's name in joy and praise. A large red banner was even plastered on the 30-meter-high city wall's entrance of Blizzard City, warmly congratulating the Samsara team for their expedition to Biting Lake and their triumphant return. The chief of operations Tu Yunlai and other several senior officials even came to officially welcome the Samsara team. After these people appeared, Gao Changkong finally got out of his car. He was a tall guy, about 6'4", with a gentle smile on his very sunny face. Gao Changkong's blue curly hair fell naturally, adding a bit of West Coast style to his charm, and he seems to be in good shape. Gao Changkong's appearance inevitably caused another round of screams and cheers. Tu Yunlai welcomed Gao Changkong and thanked the entire team for all the hard work on behalf of Blizzard City. After a firm handshake, he silently bounced, leaving the stage to Gao Changkong and the Samsara team. However, as Gao Changkong was basking in all the glory, his eyes fell on Bailey Chongqing not far away. Gao Changkong smiled and raised his hand high, motioning Bailey Chongqing to come over. Bailey Chongqing smiled and informed Zhang Yi that they should go and say hello. So, as the two took a couple steps forward, the crowd immediately noticed Zhang Yi with surprise, questioning who he was. They haven't seen him before. And what's more shocking was his association with Bailey Chongqing from the Black Robe team. Zhang Yi lagged behind Bailey Chongqing by half a step, and didn't want to be too eye-catching, but it was of no use, because within this brief moment, he was the topic of everyone's curiosity. Bailey Chongqing finally closed the distance between himself and his friend, smiling from ear to ear as he firmly gave Gao Changkong a bear hug. Congratulations, Lao Gao. Did you encounter any troubles on this trip to Biting Lake? Gao Changkong also smiled and casually replied that fortunately, the creature they encountered this time around was very powerful but seriously lacked brains. It just had too many subordinates, so it took them a lot of time to wipe them out. He looked at Zhang Yi and curiously asked who he was. Bailey Chongqing quickly introduced Zhang Yi with a pleasant gesture. Let me introduce you. His name is Zhang Yi. He is a mutant from Tianhai City. Unfortunately, his story is a long one, so we will talk about it slowly later. Although Bailey Chongqing's introduction was very simple, there was no trace of contempt in Gao Chongqing's eyes. The person who could make Bailey Chongqing show this much excitement and admiration must at least be of similar level to him. He was a master. Gao Chongqing took the initiative and stretched out his hand to Zhang Yi. Hello Zhang Yi. I am Gao Chongqing, the captain of the Samsara Squadron. Although Zhang Yi was not wearing any gloves, he decisively shook hands with Gao Chongqing. Captain Gao, I have long heard of your name. While looking at Gao Chongqing, Zhang Yi also observed all the members of the Samsara team. The Samsara team has a total of 9 members. However, the most noteworthy ones were the 2 people next to Gao Chongqing. Standing behind him on the left was a tall and gentle woman with long red hair cascading behind her. Such a long hair color was very rare, so it was also very eye-catching. Combined with her slim figure and cute face, it was easy for anyone to take a liking towards her. Anyway, on the other side was a handsome man with a middle-parted hairstyle, but the look on his face evidently highlighted his eccentric nature. Gao Chongqing faced the crowd and shouted loudly, thanking everyone. They've returned safely and were deeply moved by their concern. There was another round of excited shouting around. Someone in the crowd even shouted for Gao Chongqing to personally unalive all the members of Eclipse Moon. As soon as this topic appeared, it instantly ignited the emotions of the surrounding audience. Most people, due to their emotions, looked down on the country of Neon. At present, Blizzard City had lost twice in the battle against Eclipse Moon, so the crowd was very angry and hopes that Gao Chongqing can save the face of the entire Jiangnan region. Zhang Yi was speechless witnessing the entire scene. How could these people not understand how powerful Eclipse Moon really was? They always exude this air of arrogance, looking down on their opponents, but they don't know that this will only make their opponents more confident and determined to relish in their victory against them. Gao Chongqing did not give a definite reply when he heard this, but as his gaze shifted back to Bailey Chongqing, he calmly stated that he was heading to the operations center to report the mission to Zhuzheng first. Once he's done, they can find a place to have some drinks and talk about what happened in Blizzard City recently while he was out on his mission. Bailey Chongqing scratched his head and nervously replied that since Gao Chongqing had just returned with a great victory, the higher-ups should welcome him appropriately first. Gao Chongqing shook his head and stated that he would refuse. When headquarters asked me to come back, I heard something about Eclipse Moon. It is not appropriate to be too ostentatious now, which may easily cause misunderstandings. After all, the Heavenly God team just suffered heavy casualties, and Deng Shintong died in that battle. This left the entire Deng family and the combat center in a bad state. If the Samsara team starts to celebrate wildly, people would think that their celebration is a deliberate provocation. Gao Chongqing was a very thoughtful person and would not make such a mistake. In that case, Bailey Chongqing said with a smile, let's have a small gathering later. Zhang Yi didn't say anything as the 3 got into Bailey Chongqing's car at the parking space outside. Gao Chongqing sat in the co-pilot seat while Zhang Yi sat in the back. The car headed for the combat command center. Along the way, Gao Chongqing and Bailey Chongqing chatted casually. Zhang Yi could see that they had a good relationship. Gao Chongqing asked Bailey Chongqing about the Eclipse group. That matter is not optimistic, he stated seriously. Almost all members of the God team were wiped out, and only 3 people came back. Bailey Chongqing told Gao Chongqing what happened, including the failure of the last mission, but conveniently left out the newly formed investigation team. Gao Chongqing was surprised that Deng Shintong did not only fail the mission but chose to self-destruct. It seems that you came back at the right time. Bailey Chongqing calmly added, if nothing unexpected happens, the mission will fall on your head. You must be mentally prepared. Gao Chongqing's eyes were solemn, but he looked calm on the surface. We're the order maintainers of the Jiangnan region. No matter who wants to disturb the peace and tranquility of this land, no matter how powerful the opponent is, we will not be afraid to take action. Bailey Chongqing nodded slightly, agreeing wholeheartedly. This time, headquarters obviously attaches more importance to Eclipse Moon. The number of people dispatched from Blizzard City will definitely increase. When you meet with Zhuzheng, he will definitely inform you about this matter. Moreover, Eclipse Moon also suffered a lot of losses in the battle. And although their team leader killed Deng Shintong, he was also seriously injured. And they lost 5 people in the battle. Bailey Chongqing raised his thumb to the back seat and continued with a satisfied smile. The person in the back was the one who solo killed 4 members of the Eclipse group. Bailey Chongqing's words made Gao Chongqing shift his gaze towards Zhang Yi. He had just returned and didn't know the details of the incident, so Zhang Yi's performance was shocking to hear. Zhang Yi waved his hand and asked Bailey Chongqing not to exaggerate too much. After all, two of them were on the verge of death anyway, so he just took advantage of the opportunity. Gao Changkong, still a bit incredulous, stated that it wasn't surprising now that he thinks about it. Their country is a vast land with a thriving population and many talented people. So it does not mean that only those born in big cities or with good family backgrounds have strong abilities. Zhang Yi remembered at this time that Gao Changkong was also from an ordinary family. These words seemed to have some meaning of mutual appreciation. However, as Gao Changkong sat properly in his seat, his expression suddenly changed to that of cold seriousness, and his next thoughts revealed a shocking revelation. It seems that in order to join forces with the Eclipse group to overthrow Zhu Zhang, we must first get rid of this troublesome guy also. The scene then shifted to the password bar, and it seems like an hour had passed. And within this hour, Gao Changkong met Zhu Zhang inside his office at the Combat Command Center. The two just talked about the content of the mission briefly, and after praising his achievements, they began to discuss the matter of Eclipse Moon. Half an hour later, the meeting was over and the three left there and came to the password bar. As soon as Gao Changkong entered the place, he immediately caused a sensation in the entire bar. The veterans, the bartenders, and even the dancers. Everyone showed great enthusiasm and warmly welcomed him back. Once again, our Captain Gao had completed his assigned task perfectly. It seems we have to trouble you to deal with the Neon's matter as well. After all, our Huashu nation's dignity must be restored. Gao Changkong smiled and nodded slightly to everyone. He then proceeded to book his usual sectional box as the three entered amid the cheers of the crowd. Also, the general manager of the establishment personally came out to tell Gao Changkong that today's consumption could be waived. This was, of course, not a small gesture, especially after the end of the world, where alcohol itself was an expensive luxury that ordinary people dare not even think about. And the consumption of the password bar has always been high, with an average consumption of more than 20,000 points per person. Not to mention customers of Gao Changkong and Bailey Chongqing's status, who often spend six figures. Therefore, free shit are extremely rare in the password bar. Taking a seat, Gao Changkong smiled bitterly and wondered why he'd never received this kind of treatment in the past. Bailey Chongqing smiled and took a seat right next to him, stating that the reason was quite simple. It's because everyone has high hopes for him now. Gao Changkong frowned slightly and sighed softly. Ultimately, it's due to the failure of the Heavenly God team that everyone is panicking. The more chaotic the time, the more people expect heroes to appear. Everyone in Blizzard City is currently unease, and Gao Changkong's victorious return immediately made him a hero that people were looking forward to. Bailey Chongqing's cheerful demeanor immediately took a nosedive at the mention of the Heavenly God team. Their demise, especially Deng Shintong's death, momentarily filled him with regret, although they weren't close. At this moment, Gao Changkong's attention shifted to Zhang Yi with a smile on his face and a meaningful look in his eyes. Zhu Zhang has already told me about you, and I must admit, I'm still a little shocked that you managed to gain the commander's attention. If someone like you appeared in Blizzard City, you would definitely become a captain of an investigation team, or a detachment commander in the Yenyun army. Zhang Yi raised his glass to Gao Changkong. You are too kind. Compared with Captain Gao, I still have a lot to learn. Hearing this, Gao Changkong laughed a little, stating that Zhang Yi was too modest. The two clinked their glasses in the air and gulped down their glass of wine. With his usual smile, Bailey Chongqing curiously questioned Gao Changkong what else Zhu Zhang filled him in. Or is it inconvenient to tell them? Well, there was nothing inconvenient, just the matter of merging the God Squad and the Black Robe Squad to form the Tengu Squad. Gao Changkong then pointed in Zhang Yi's direction and continued, Zhu Zhang also told me that he really wants you to be the captain. Zhang Yi sighed softly and shrugged. I refused the offer and I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. I'm just an ordinary warehouse manager in Tianhai City. I neither have the talent to lead, nor do I have the courage. So I don't intend on managing the lives of other people. Zhang Yi spread a hand towards Gao Changkong and continued. Now that Captain Gao is back, you will definitely be in charge of this operation. So why don't you manage the Tengu Squad as well? Gao Changkong shook his head helplessly. That's impossible. The higher-ups will not be willing to hand over the Celestial God Squad and the Black Robe Squad to me. Zhang Yi also realized at this time that the top management would not want their subordinates to have too much power. After all, it is the end of the world. And as the previous societal order collapsed, Blizzard City barely maintained theirs. And at present it looked strong, but in fact the rules were not stable. They might collapse if care is not taken. If Gao Changkong really gathers the power of the other two investigation teams, then in the future, it would be difficult for any force in the entire Blizzard City to compete with them. Zhu Zhang and his people's considerations were reasonable. Bailey Chongqing, at this moment, frowned slightly and calmly pointed out that currently, There's not many people in the entire Blizzard City who can lead an investigation team. They all hold important positions and cannot leave Blizzard City. So if Gao Changkong doesn't take the responsibility, who else can? Hearing this, Gao Changkong smiled disapprovingly and stated that Zhu Zhang and the others will make proper arrangements. As the gun barrel, all they need to do was to obey the arrangements of the top leaders. Gao Changkong looked indifferent, as if he didn't mind how the upper echelons arranged these kinds of things. After all, Gao Changkong, the popular captain of the investigation team in Blizzard City, looks sunny and calm. He was also elegant and easygoing, and can get along well with many people. When Zhang Yi chatted with him, he felt that Gao Changkong had a very good temperament. So gradually, Zhang Yi also began to talk to him in depth about some other topics, trying to gather any useful information. The first being the tasks recently performed by Gao Changkong's investigation team. Captain Gao, I don't know if it's convenient to ask a question about the tasks of your investigation team. Gao Changkong thought for a while and smiled knowingly. You must ask your question first so I can grasp what aspect you are asking about. After all, some things are required by the top management to be kept confidential, but most of the tasks are actually not very secretive. Zhang Yi placed his wine glass in front of him and asked his first question. There are 6 investigation teams in the Jiangnan district, and they have been on missions for a long time. Even the appearance of neon mutants did not recall all the investigation teams. Is your mission level higher than Eclipse Moon? Gao Changkong thought for a while and replied with a smile. It's difficult to answer this question in one sentence. I can only say that our missions are different every time, and they are varied and strange. He pointed at Bailey Chongqing. Take the Black Robe Squad for example. They are mainly responsible for the people problem. If there is a large-scale unrest in various cities, they will be responsible for suppressing it. And our Samsara Squad has been solving the beast problem recently, and anything relating to mutated wild beasts. You should know that after the end of the world, we were ushered into the Great Mutation era. Not only humans can mutate and evolve, but other creatures can as well. Zhang Yi nodded slightly. Of course I know this. My pet is a mutated creature after all. Gao Changkong continued with a smile. There are fewer mutants in urban areas, and there are extremely few fierce ones. However, in the mountains and rivers, where wild animals gather, large-scale mutant groups may appear. Just like us humans. The more people there are, the higher the probability of mutants appearing. And the stronger the mutant individuals are. Even in some areas, mutant groups of beasts have appeared. Gao Changkong's eyes became serious. Take Biting Lake, where we previously were, for example. Many mutant beasts have wisdom, and are even no less than humans. Even ordinary mutant jackals, tigers and leopards are not comparable to human physical fitness. The global catastrophe is almost a return to the primitive age, and our advantage in weapons has been greatly weakened. This has allowed mutated beasts to rise. During my team's mission, the 5 cities around Biting Lake had been occupied by the beasts, and we, with the full support of Blizzard City, took 3 months to wipe them out. Zhang Yi couldn't help but take a deep breath. Isn't this a beast tide? But if you think about it carefully, this is actually very reasonable. After a long period of evolution, humans are no longer suitable for nature. The sudden disaster killed most people. On the contrary, wild animals that are more adaptable to changes in the natural environment began to rise. After all, most wild animals are physically stronger than humans. As long as there are some mutations, they will become a tough opponent. Zhang Yi couldn't help but comment. Fortunately, I live by the sea. The salt content of the seawater near the coast is not that high, so it is basically frozen. And even if there are some mutant creatures, they will not be too strong. I am afraid that there are many powerful and terrifying mutants in the ocean. However, those are also creatures in the deep sea. They wouldn't run to the land to make trouble. Zhang Yi asked curiously. Then, the situation of the other investigation teams is the same. Gao Changkong smiled and just calmly replied that they all have their own troubles. He didn't elaborate, and Zhang Yi realized that this was a secret that could not be known to outsiders. After all, he was not a regular employee of Blizzard City yet, so some words should be kept from him. And just like that, an hour passed, and the 3 of them drank and chatted non-stop.